All right, Christy, are you going to start us off?
Certainly. Good evening. My name is Christy Grasty, and I'm one of the assistant principals at Los Gatos High School, and I want to welcome everyone who's attending to the May Community Forum for the Los Gatos Saratoga Union High School District. And we are so privileged to have as lead facilitators two amazing educators and human beings, Dr. Nancy Dome and Kelly Cole of Epic Education, which is a nonprofit organization devoted to promoting cultural diversity and inclusion in schools across the country. And I am going to hand up the microphone, so to speak, to them at this point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kelly, will you share the presentation? We are excited that you have joined us. For those of you who are new, this is supported by the students of both Saratoga and Los Gatos High School and the staff of both schools. And so it is interactive. And so I want to say that now, because when it comes time for us to interact together and we put you in breakout rooms, if we'll make the announcement beforehand, so that if you choose to opt out, that you can actually leave the call, because it makes it very difficult to set up the rooms and then have people disappear and not show up. And so we've worked really hard, and the students have worked really hard to prepare a really, I think, beautiful presentation for today. And we are just grateful that you're here to join us. And so I'm Nancy Dome, and I am the CEO of Epic Education, and my co-conspirator facilitator.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Cole, and I'm our Director of Programming and Innovation, and we're really happy to be here with you tonight. I'm going to move us right along because we have one of our wonderful students who's going to set the context for why we're all here tonight.
Thank you so much, Kelly and Nancy. So good evening, everyone, and happy Eid al-Fitr for those who celebrate it. Thank you for taking the time to come to today's community forum, where we will be discussing how to make a positive impact on the lives of the students, friends, and classmates within the school district. We know that 2020 and 2021 have contained a series of events unlike anything we have seen before, consisting of COVID-19, Black Lives Matter, racism against Asian Americans, and the Me Too movement. All these factors can cause a lot of worry and stress, and without a proper mechanism of release, it can severely affect the mental health of students. Despite the human necessity for sharing these stresses, our society has made it difficult to share our feelings and has stigmatized mental illnesses. Even when it comes to safe spaces involving family and friends, such as schools or homes, it is not always easy for students to talk about such worrisome topics. This community forum will provide a safe space for us to practice discussing hard topics, such as the ones mentioned earlier. To practice these discussions, we will introduce a few topics of conversation. For each topic, we will divide the people here today into small, randomized breakout rooms that will consist of a teacher and student to facilitate the discussion. Our private and confidential discussions will follow the outlines students have practiced in Epic Education's modules. Epic Education, an educational consultant that strives to spread diversity, equity, and inclusion across the United States, has emphasized the importance of RIR protocol, which stands for recognizing your emotions, interrupting when you want to understand the other person's point of view, and repairing connections to heal after you discuss the topic. The important part of the last one is that you don't need to come to an agreement or force the other person to take your side, but rather you both share your opinions, even if at the end, you both choose to continue looking at it from your previous perspective. I highly recommend that you join our discussion about these issues. Although it may be a new experience or may be slightly uncomfortable, it is essential that you do your part to help the community by taking part in this meeting. The chat will be open for the entirety of the meeting, allowing anyone to participate. We want everyone to share their opinions, feelings, and questions with others so that we can have multiple perspectives. For you to properly participate in this activity, however, you will need to listen and be willing to look at things from other people's perspectives, even if you don't agree with them. We will have student moderators and teachers present, so this will be a safe space. Thank you all again for your bravery in taking the time to share your thoughts. and thank you for coming to learn how to be a better help to the student community of our district. We value your time and opinions, and we can't wait to see what you will add to our meeting.
Thanks, Pella. And you'll get to meet your facilitator team. So we just wanted to acknowledge the partners, but you'll get to meet them in the space with you. And we just wanted to take a moment, and Dr. Dome will walk through just a review kind of what that protocol is, even though Pella explained it beautifully. We'll go in just a little deeper to prepare you for the conversations that you're going to be having in the breakout spaces.
Did when you graduate, if you want a job, come and talk to us, Pella. You did a wonderful job. As she said, the protocol is based in a framework called compassionate dialogue. And the notion is about how do we engage in these difficult conversations that we need to have, and in some ways have been conditioned not to have them, through a lens of compassion. So when we let our feelings go too long, we end up kind of spouting out in anger, and we lose that compassion because we haven't addressed them sooner. So by using the RIR, we're actually able to lean in much earlier in these difficult conversations and do it with empathy and compassion. So the R, we're going to be asking you, when you recognize, to really focus on your feelings. What feelings come up for you when you hear the statement or just whatever is triggering you? Because we don't really get in touch with our feelings that often. A lot of times we focus on what's happened. So, you know, that hurt, that was stupid, or I didn't like that, instead of like, that hurt me, that made me angry, that made me sad. And getting in touch with those actually allow us to use our emotions as a tool to help us respond rather than react to what's come up. And so one of the things we ask you to do is like, what happens in your body? Where do you feel it? And what does that mean when you feel it in certain places? And then what does it make you think about? Does it trigger some past experience that, you know, has nothing to do with what's happened right now? And so getting in touch with your feeling is crucial. The second step, interrupt. What questions can you ask to learn more and discover the intention behind what was said? If we're assuming positive intent, then we want to understand and make sure that if something offended us, that we are sure that it was meant to offend us and not our interpretation of what we've heard. And then also, another way to interrupt is, how do you voice a different experience, and how can you share the impact that something is having on you? So your intention may be great. You may have intended to give me a compliment, but the impact was that it hurt my feelings. Right? And then finally, the repair is, how do you take action and continue to stay connected in the relationship with yourself and others? How do you stay engaged until there's resolution? But I want to say, as Pella so perfectly put it, resolution does not mean it's a happy ending. Sometimes a resolution is what I always say, divorce. Sometimes the resolution is that something has to end. Because you can't work it out. But the interrupt is a crucial piece in the compassion, because if we can work and interrupt and seek to understand, and then at the end, if our repair is that we separate, we've done all that we can to salvage that relationship and that experience, as opposed to just ghosting people and writing them off. So those are our 3 steps. And in the small groups, we're going to be able to dig deeper in that with the support of the students and staff. And I did put it in the chat, but I want to say it out loud. We are recording this, but we will not be recording those private conversations. So when we get into the breakout rooms, those will be private, confidential, but the large group we record and then share for anyone who's not able to attend the meeting.
Thanks, Nance. And where we want to focus tonight is, we're really going to kind of mostly live in that recognized piece. And so we just wanted to offer again, as Nancy had said, that the recognize is about our own emotions, not what we think about the other person who has said something, but how it impacts us, so that we can find our way to engage. And so I think it was Pella who shared the link to the document out. So if you could share that again. There is a guide sheet for the RIR that we want to offer to everyone who's in the forum with us tonight, and it will have this emotion wheel in it. So as you're in your breakout rooms, and the facilitators will be prompting you to think about how you feel about something, you'll have this as a reference to stay there. really the students have been working on this RIR for quite a while. And so Carrie's going to frame a video for you to kind of prime what the possibilities are for this work.
Thank you, Kelly. So a few years ago, after working with EPIC and learning about the RIR protocol, a group of our staff and students decided that we needed to commission a short video that we could create so that students could better understand, particularly the term microaggressions and what do those look like and feel like, and then work on the protocol itself. And so as you watch this film, some of you may have seen it before, but you might want to pay attention to anything that you recognize as something that needs to be interrupted, and then watch if students are able to interrupt, and then how they try to repair at the end. It's less than 8 minutes, I think. So it's a short opportunity to kind of practice just in your mind what we're going to do in our small breakout groups.
Thanks, Carrie.
Your physics test back yet? No, didn't you hear? Someone cheated. What? Who cheated? When? Someone in Johnson last week. There's probably some Chinese guy. Probably. I mean, they'd do anything for a better grade.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mrs. Baker, and I'm the substitute today. Let's start by taking roll. Stephen Chow.
Here.
Sarah Lee.
Here.
Great. Scott Jeffries.
Here.
Wow, this is a tough one. Angel, maybe? Angel.
Here.
Kel, we lost sound. You mute it. You can't mute. You can't mute.
You're overreacting on your period or something.
No. Are you on yours?
You definitely failed bio. You would have learned that guys don't have periods.
Whatever. Yeah, nothing too crazy.
Taylor, Julie, wait up.
Hey.
How are you doing?
I was just telling, nothing too crazy. We just went to her house, had ice cream, saw Mean Girls. Yeah, nothing too crazy. What about you?
Nothing really. Honestly, I've been feeling kind of depressed lately.
Literally, same. I'm so stressed out right now, I can't even.
But it's not just about stress. It's like I should be stressed, but I can't make myself care about anything enough to be. Does that make any sense?
It makes so much sense. I've been feeling the exact same way for the past week. I definitely get it. It's just, you need to think more positively, you know? Look at the bright side of things more.
Yeah. Hey, I do yoga every single Sunday morning. You should totally come by.
I'm not sure you guys really understand.
Don't understand? I mean, come on. Of course we understand. We're just trying to help.
I'll see you guys later.
So today we're going to start with a current event. Let's start with talking about the DREAM Act. Does anybody have a personal connection to the DREAM Act?
Alex has a personal connection to it. He's from Mexico.
No, I'm not. I'm from here.
Aren't you really from Mexico?
Really not. My parents are from Venezuela.
Well, Alex, what can you tell us about the DREAM Act?
Well, I don't really have a personal connection to it since I was born here, but I don't think it should be repealed.
And there's probably a perfect example of why we shouldn't judge people based on their background. But let's ask them questions. Now, The 2001 DREAM Act actually was introduced in 2001, but it wasn't passed. Okay, there's been several attempts to get it passed, it hasn't passed.
Race and prejudice. How many of you think racism still exists today? Unfortunately, it's still very present, but it's a lot more subtle. Sometimes it can be just a remark about somebody's race, or it can be a conversation where somebody feels left out. You may not realize it, but how you act and what you say reflects your past.
But if you restrict what people say, does it not go against free speech?
Yeah, you mean I can't say sped anymore?
What about that's so gay? Well, you can say whatever you want, but you also have to think of the consequences. As someone who has ADHD, it doesn't feel great to hear you use words like that as an insult, and I'm sure for someone who's gay, it feels the same.
Oh.
Hey, about what I said earlier, I'm really sorry. I wasn't listening. If you want someone to talk to, I'm here. Thanks. I really appreciate it. It's just so frustrating how there's still all of this like misconception about mental health and mental illness and stuff. I'm really glad you're on my side.
Yeah, I'm sorry too, Taylor, about how I acted this morning. I was super frustrated this morning, but that doesn't excuse my dismissiveness towards you. What happened? Well, it's just that, you know, the substitute got my name wrong, and I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but when it's been happening to you constantly for the rest of your life, just because you're the one with the foreign sounding name, that can be frustrating.
Yeah, that does sound annoying.
I mean, it can be. I just wish more people would ask me instead of assuming or just butchering my name. Well, you guys are really understanding, so thanks for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking about things that need understanding, can one of you help me with calc?
I knew calc, I wouldn't be at the school.
Did you guys hear about the physics test last week? I can't believe someone cheated. My grade took a major hit.
Yeah, me too.
I heard it was Steven.
Was it you? No, of course not.
So, Steven?
No, I didn't do it. Yeah, I don't know why y'all think that.
I just heard it was some Chinese guy.
And I heard that tomorrow there's going to be a snow day. I mean, what does being Chinese even have to do with cheating?
Nothing, I guess.
Exactly, you can't just make assumptions like that.
Hey, thanks, man.
Yeah, oh man, you're not just the same for me.
Sorry about this morning. I guess I needed something like this to happen to me to understand what it's like. We good?
If you can get my name right. It's not Anj, it's Anjali.
Anjali.
We're good.
Dope.
Exactly, you can't just make assumptions like that.
Yeah, I'm sorry too, Taylor, about how I acted this morning.
I love that video. Every time I see it, so well done. Thank you. So what we're going to do is we're going to just do a group brainstorm in the chat. So as Carrie kind of set the stage for the video, what are some statements that you have heard? You know, there were some examples in the video that have triggered you and you wished you knew how to respond. So if you could take a minute, because this is going to help seed our conversation in the breakout rooms. If you can add any of those statements, and don't worry, we're not going to think they're yours. They're statements that you heard that you wish that that triggered you and you wish you knew how to respond. The invalidation and dismissal of mental health. Yep, that's one for sure. What else? What else have you heard? Where are you really from? Yeah. And these aren't only the things from the video, That's So Gay. These are things that, let's expand it even beyond what the students brought up. What are some of the things that you've heard in your everyday life? We have a lot of community members on here. What are the things that you heard within the community that you wish you knew how to respond to? You speak well, yeah. You're good at blank for a girl, yeah. When people use the retarded flippantly, yeah. The culture, that culture only cares about grades. Statements that presume a limit of someone's potential. She isn't qualified. Being Chinese has nothing to do with cheating. Yeah. The assumption that people with handicaps like autism are dumb and need to be talked down to. Yeah, absolutely. What else? And facilitators, if there's anything that catches your eye here, you might want to make a note of it. The assumption that people with handicap, yeah, I read that one, sorry. People who normalize saying racial slurs. They're only smart because they're Asian. Yeah. People who say you suck. Yeah. Anything else? You just need to find the right person. All right. You throw like a girl. Fetishization of Asian women. You're being too sensitive. I added, do you play basketball? Because I get that all the time, or I did when I was young and active. Yeah, okay. So facilitators, if there's anything here that caught your eye, you might want to make a note of it. And if there's, go ahead, Kel.
I was going to say, and for the folks in the audience too, just thinking about that, recognize as those came up, were there any that grabbed you, that you felt? And then the invitation to think about what was that emotion that came up for you, and to sink into that as part of what you'll be able to explore in the breakout rooms.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and there was one more. When people say girls are being bossy when they try to take charge of something.
And you people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so as we go into the breakout rooms, you know, this really is a place of discovery. not making assumptions that we already know where people are coming from, and really engaging to be able to hear each other with the thought that we have something to learn. We have a way to expand what we think, to hear someone else and acknowledge, to share who we are, and to create a different kind of dialogue in our community. And so some of the staff and students offered these discussion norms. So along with the protocol, which is going to be the structure of how you're speaking to each other, we just wanted to take a moment to go over some of these norms. And so when you're in your group, just being mindful of how much space you're taking up. So we're making sure that we're giving opportunity for everybody to speak, and so we can hear different perspectives. Actively listening, respectfully listening. And by that meaning, not just listening to think about how you're going to respond, but actually taking a breath and slowing down and trying to hear what folks are sharing with you. We want to critique ideas, not individuals. A piece for us is separating the doer from the deed. So I may disagree with your opinion about something, but that doesn't mean I condemn you as a person. And so let's stay at that level. Commit to learning, not debating. Again, this is a place of discovery we're inviting you into. Avoid blame, speculation, inflammatory language. And this is why we ask questions in the interrupt. So we're not assuming, we actually get to understand where other folks are. And then just, again, avoid assumptions. Sometimes, especially based on how we see each other, we make up a lot of stories about who we think each other is just by the physical pieces we see. And so remembering to slow down and really engage with someone who's there and hear what their complex story is, not their simplicity. And so we're gonna prepare to go into the breakout rooms, and our wonderful tech moderator, Ben, is gonna go ahead and put you in the rooms together with your facilitators. And really your focus is gonna be just thinking about and sharing the first statements that stuck out to you, and you're going to have a second opportunity to go back into a breakout room. So we'll focus on everyone choosing one statement first, and really stay in that recognized space. And if you feel, if there's time and everyone has had an opportunity to talk, then start to think about what are some questions or impacts you could share to someone if you overheard that or wanted to go ahead and interrupt into it. So I'm going to stop the screen share for a second while we get into the breakout rooms. And I just want to give us a moment for anyone to just ask any questions, any clarifying things before we go into the breakout room. And you're welcome to come off mute or just go ahead and put it into the chat. Or you can give me a thumbs up on that if we're good.
So just so everybody knows, when we break out, we'll be coming back and reporting out what some of our major takeaways are. So the idea is we're going to keep coming back to the larger group, so we won't just disappear.
Yeah, thanks, Christy. Yeah, stay with us afterwards.
Yeah. And then also Kelly and I are going to be popping in, but don't stop your conversation if you see us pop in. Okay. Just keep going, and we're just, coming in to be observers. And I would invite, as I stated before, that if you're not interested in participating in the discussion, this would be the time to drop off the call, because when Ben puts you in a room, if you don't show up, it makes it very difficult for our facilitators to facilitate. So
and I apologize, I can't remember, was it 10 minutes for this first breakout or 15?
I think it's 10.
10. Okay, great. So just folks know you have about 10 minutes to budget time to have everybody share.
Okay. I think we're ready for the rooms, Ben.
Opening now.
Before I share screen, I'm just going to give you a moment to find your room partners and wave and thank them for the conversations.
Okay, So right now we have an opportunity to, and I don't know, Ben, if we can pin the students who led the rooms. But basically we wanted to have the students who led the conversations have an opportunity to debrief and answer these questions as like the first time they're facilitating. And then we wanted to have the group watch and just see kind of how the students are experiencing, like stepping into these kind of, a little bit scary shoes of having to lead these conversations. So if we can, I don't know if we're able to do that. But well, how about the students just will unmute and speak up. So my first question is, what stood out to you about the conversation in your room? And so the facilitators, what stood out to you?
Well, in our room, one thing that stood out to me was that a lot of the experiences shared were about being dismissed on account of gender and like stereotypical ideas about what like women like and can engage in, like sports and cars, and having a kind of collective experience where people were dismissive and less like they assumed that someone wasn't going to be interested in a conversation because of their gender, presumably, and how that made people feel.
Great, thank you. Who else? What stood out?
Okay. Yeah, in my room, something just stood out to me. We talked about people making fun of people with special needs and mental disabilities. And something that stood out to me was that when people would interrupt, a lot of the times the person who would say that would switch what they said they believed to match what the person said who interrupted it. So they would say, oh, I didn't actually believe that. But then they would see that behavior persist whenever they were around other students who were influencing those decisions and words.
Yeah, so that notion of that you're kind of who you are and your beliefs shifted depending on who you were around, right? Yeah. What else? Some other students in the rooms who led?
For a little bit.
Oh,
yeah.
You can go.
Okay. I know just for a little bit, we talked about kind of like the importance of listening to other people. Obviously, we were listening while we were having the conversation, but like a parent had asked about just kind of when she's talking to her child, like kind of like what's a good way to facilitate that and kind of like get it started. And I know Miss Anhire had talked about just kind of like when you're talking to your kid, you have to kind of listen and like, well, it is important to kind of solve problems. Just kind of holding out on that and just listening at first is very, very important to kind of getting that conversation started at least.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Marissa?
Sorry. Something that stood out to me was like we were talking about one group member talked about her experiences with like being asked where she was from, but like it was like when she was traveling, so it wasn't like someone she was going to see again. So I thought it was important that we brought up like context of when these of when something you want to interrupt is happening, because versus like someone you may never see again, or like someone in your class who repeatedly says things that can be hurtful towards other people, I think was an important thing we brought up. And I also thought like we discussed a lot about how mental health is stigmatized, like how we saw in the video, how people can be very dismissive of it, or like when people reach out, like they might have good intentions about wanting to help their friends and like empathize, but they may not have the same experiences. And we were just like talking about how we feel like there should be more active education involved with that.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. I want to hit, I know we have one more breakout, but I want to hit the second question. What was challenging about leading this conversation? So maybe a couple other people who didn't speak, or even if you did, just, what was challenging about doing this? Because this is the first time that you all got to do this, like for reals.
I can speak to this, I think. So the people in my group raised a really good point of how a lot of times when they face statements about like, for example, like, oh, you're just on your period, or like, oh, all Asians are smart, and then they try to say something about it, people will dismiss them and kind of be unwilling to have a conversation. So for example, say like, oh, you're just being too sensitive, or like, oh, it was just a joke, which makes it like kind of hard to pursue a conversation with them. And so for me, it was like a little bit difficult because I had to like sit there and kind of think about like, okay, like if I were in this situation, how would I interrupt it? Because this is something that like I've faced before and like not handled in the best way, because I was just like, oh, okay, it's just a joke, I guess. And so I guess that was kind of the challenging part for me, just to like think about like on the spot, like, okay, if I'm in this scenario, like how would I actually interrupt it and like try to start and like have a conversation with these people. So I guess that was kind of challenging for me as a facilitator, but it was also really rewarding.
Good. Anyone else want to share out on that?
It's okay if I speak?
Yes, please.
Okay, so for me, I had on the back of my head, what I was thinking when I was speaking was, first of all, if what I was saying was actually something that mattered. I felt like everybody did have their own issues, and their own problems that they have to face, and I felt like mine was a little on the less important side. But along with that, as I was trying to talk from my experience, I was describing my problems from my experience, and it was really difficult because I had to dig in through through these bad memories and retrace what happened, specifically me not being able to find a group I could be with, and also just straight up being bullied because of my ethnicity, who I am, who my friends were, and such. So I guess those were my two problems, which is me questioning my own problems, and also having difficulty trying to backtrack.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. All those things it's powerful, reliving that is difficult. And then how do you find your power in that? How do you move through that and know that you have a space and a voice that needs to be heard and honored? And that's part of what the protocol does, is that it's about self-care. It's about giving us all an opportunity to take care of ourselves by advocating for ourselves, and also advocating for others who aren't able to advocate for themselves. So thank you. I think we have a few students who have to leave. We have about 15 more minutes, and our plan, let's see. Well, no, let's stick with this, and if we don't do the second one, that's okay. What did you learn, student facilitators? What did you learn?
Something I learned was that it was difficult to find a specific scenario when I asked, because it was almost common for people to run into small remarks that they didn't know if they should stand up to or not, and if they should just take it as a joke or not. And although like sometimes they did say something, and a lot of the times they tried to stand up for what was right, it just became almost normal. So they couldn't actually, a lot of the students in the breakout room couldn't actually find a specific example of when they had to stand up for what they believed was right.
Yeah. Who else? Well, I'm going to use this opportunity. I'm concerned about time, and I'm also concerned about the pairings that have people had to leave. So why don't we have the participants reflect now? So now as a participant, What stood out for you in the conversation? Or what was challenging about participating? Or what did you learn? So this is a time you can just unmute and speak up, or you can use the reaction and raise your hand and we'll call on you, whichever you prefer. But since I can't see everybody, I think unmuting and speaking up would be best. Who will start?
I think what stood out to me most about this conversation was how relatable like everyone's experiences were. And also it was kind of hard to like talk to everyone like over Zoom because there's not the same vibe as being in person.
Thank you. What else? Who else? These are conversations, so I invite you to step into your discomfort and take risk and share. Who else will share? And thank you, Olivia. Do you have anyone else? We're silent.
This may be echoing what Olivia said, but it's challenging when you have never met someone face to face before, and then all of a sudden you're going in a deep dive. So there's a risk taking there that is really special about these kinds of opportunities, because these are under the waterline kinds of thoughts that a lot of us have, but we never really get a chance to talk about. And I felt it amazing how vulnerable people were to just share experiences.
Yeah, thank you, Christy.
I would also like to say, in our chat room, we didn't have cameras on and nobody vocalized using their voice, but it was a rich discussion even over chat. So we had people sharing and important things and how they feel about different scenarios in their own personal experiences. And I'm just really proud that those students even shared there, and that was great for us.
Yeah, and that's actually, I hadn't even considered, but it's a great strategy just to sometimes turn off the cameras in those moments so that you don't feel as vulnerable when you're having these conversations. So that is a strategy that absolutely can be used. And maybe one more. Is there one more? And then what we'll do is just go through the closing, because we actually only have about 13 minutes left anyway. So anyone else? Allison said, I guess it was hard to know how to respond to some comments from people I've never met. Yeah, I get that. And then Pella says, step out of your comfort zone to have better learning experiences. It might be hard, but it's worth it. And Theo said, I think someone might have already brought this up, but what was challenging was naming instances of problems brought up because it was so typical. And I think that's important. I think that, the ones that are typical, that's gay, that's retarded, all those things that people say, we are so desensitized to hearing them that we just let them go, but it doesn't decrease the harm that they cause. And so if we want to change behaviors, we really have to hold people accountable for their language, whether it's intentional or not. And again, and Kelly, we'll get into this in the next one, is that the intention doesn't matter. It's the impact that matters. And so we don't have to let these slights go because they're so typical and we're so, it doesn't mean anything. Well, it does mean something. And if it triggers you, it means something. And so how do we do that self-care by using the RIR to rectify those feelings and rectify what's being said? So just some food for thought. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'd love to add just one more question, because part of what came up in our room was the desire from students for staff to initiate these kind of conversations more. So I would actually love to hear from the staff partners if there was anything that you learned or inspired you from watching the students facilitate, but also how they talked about things that is inspiring you about how you can initiate these things. So staff partners, I'd love to hear from you also.
I can say that what what um, what stood out to me the most for our conversation is that I feel the pressure to conform, and I feel the pressure to be a certain way and to act a certain way, and it's really hard. And I think that I learned to deal with it, and you know, I'm oldish, so I kind of learn how to cope. And it's really hard to hear from the students that this happens to them, and they have to deal with this on a daily basis. It's just that just that just strikes me. You know, it's hard. You know, I it just my wish to help just got stronger.
Yeah, thanks, Mariana. Any other staff members?
Oh, can I?
Yes, please.
Oh, thank you. I was with Kelly's room, and what struck me most was I think we should have more opportunities like this to speak up and talk about these issues that I think sometimes we kept inside and are not able to express. And I think it was a really great opportunity for me to see how much actually students really care about these things, and that they are really, I think we as a educator and student teachers and administration, we need to reach out to them more. I think we are expecting students to do the initiative, but I think we need to support them more than what their initiatives are. I think there are a lot of things that we can do, and even everyday things. I think one student was saying that the one teacher, I think her math teacher, always ask the student and check in and how they're feeling, and then the student, the teacher really care about the student. And I think those even little things matters. So I think that was a really kind of me thinking that I shouldn't be thinking just so much about the curriculum, and just kind of step back and really step into the students' everyday life and be closer to them. So that was something that I really learned from this today.
Thank you. Rory, you were going to speak as well?
Yeah, it just stood out to me that there are the types of things that were kind of shown in the video that are said that really impact people in a negative way, or maybe it was something that people wrote in the chat, or just kind of insert your most like kind of vulnerable spot, and having somebody kind of call that out in a way is hurtful. And I think that it unfortunately kind of everybody engages in it in some way, shape, or other, even though we all have a deep sense of empathy around that, even if maybe we haven't identified it in ourselves. So it just stood out to me mostly that we all know how it feels, and you know, hopefully that we can all work in a way to lessen that in our lives, and kind of slowly branch out and have other people realize that it doesn't feel good. And so my hope is that we can keep growing in that direction.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for sharing. So Kel, we'll go on to the.
Yeah, and we talked about this slide last time, but we really did want to visit it, because again, that protocol is about the discovery of what's going on here. So where is the space for me to understand what someone is intending, and the space for me to share my impact? And so we can actually learn with each other. And again, sometimes the intent is positive or even just neutral. But if we don't know how that lands with folks, and we never have conversations about it, then we can kind of replicate the harm piece. And so the last thing we really wanted to leave with was you know, sometimes, and we saw it in the video, there can be this pushback about we're just being oversensitive when we talk about microaggressions or things like that. And we really wanted to talk about why they're important. And like at a basic level, they dehumanize us. And we saw it in the video when everyone has those labels on them, right? This very single, simplified story of who they are, which we know that's not true because none of us feels that way about ourselves. We know we're complex. And so those microaggressions keep reducing us down to these stereotypes. And this came up again in the video where Anjali's talking about her name. They have a cumulative impact. So it may seem like one small thing, but if we are feeling it over and over again, it really starts to impact our mental and our physical and our emotional health and what it feels like in the space. And it also can seem like very surface things, but oftentimes they're showing us what our deep beliefs are about who we think belongs. And so they're not just a shallow surface thing. They tell us a lot about the culture of our space. And then the last piece, just in thinking about, especially as the staff is thinking about how to work with these and support the students, that, you know, these things reinforce our structural inequity, right? They reinforce, there are symptoms of and can be causes of our access pieces, who we think is capable, things like that. So we just wanted to also give you some language when folks try to dismiss them as oversensitivity. They really kind of erode the culture of a space and the experience of belonging and the ability for people to thrive in it. And so, we really I wanted to thank you, and I'll let Nancy offer any closing pieces also, and then if Christy or Carrie want to come on as well. But thank you all for engaging in the conversation tonight.
Yeah, no, the only thing I will offer is just a sincere gratitude to the students and staff who leaned into this tonight. These forums are, you know, they're new to us as a community, as the Los Gatos community. And we just are so appreciative of everyone who shows up every time we do these. And we are in gratitude to the students and staff who are being vulnerable and taking risk and stepping into their zone of discomfort by leading these conversations and practicing in public view. And so I hope that they are leading by example and that we pick up the example and continue to follow. So thank you so much.
I just want to echo a thank you on behalf of Los Gatos High School and Saratoga High School to Dr. Dome and Kelly and all the students and staff here. Sometimes people don't realize that stepping forward to join something like this actually has the potential for really great impact down the road, not only now amongst us ourselves, but when we go out into the world and when we interact. And so I just want to encourage you to keep leaning into this work. And it's just such a pleasure to work with fellow staff and students from both schools. It's been nice to get to know some new people.
Yeah.
I think I'll just echo everything you all said. I want to especially thank the students that showed up. And even if you didn't have your camera on, I know you're listening. And I know that that is the biggest first step for so many people. So thank you for coming and participating and hearing. And just know that the next time it might be a little bit easier. And the next time you have a conversation at home with your family, it might be a little bit easier because you have opportunities to practice. And it gives me a great idea that maybe we should be doing these at school, like at lunchtime or during tutorial, like opening a door and letting people come in and have conversations. So if you are interested in doing that, just reach out and we can get that started. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Everyone have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.